The gravel crunched under the wheels of the crawler as Jock's Holaron guided it up the winding path to the edge of his inherited property. The ranch had changed since he'd last seen it 10 years ago, before he left Earth to work on the Europa terraforming initiative. Back then, it was all open fields and untamed beauty. Now, it looked like a luxury suburb had metastasized across the hills. Sleek, silver homes lined the ridges like teeth, and synthetic foliage pulsed faintly in the soft wind generated by climate stabilizer towers. I'd stopped the crawler at the crest of the slope and stepped out. Below, the lake shimmered in the afternoon sun, its waters still and perfect, as if untouched. In the center, a glittering marina floated like a spaceship adrift gleaming decks, auto-docking slips, and a full AI concierge tower. It was massive and utterly foreign. The HOA hadn't existed when his father passed the ranch on to him, but according to the passive data stream he'd scanned on his descent from orbit, a high-powered developer had carved up neighboring plots, creating a gated, eco-sustainable luxury enclave. Apparently, they'd gotten clever with zoning and installed the marina just feet over the boundary claiming shared access to the lake. Except the lake wasn't shared. Jocks blinked, triggering the HUD embedded in his left retina. A cascade of legal documents and maps appeared in the corner of his vision. The lake, according to the 2083 Geo Water Rights Act, was entirely within the boundaries of the Holaron property. It didn't matter that the HOA claimed aesthetic control over the shoreline. The water was his. He tapped his wrist implant and opened the comms channel. EVE, prep the boat. A soft chime responded in his ear. Houseboat ready. T-graph pads charged. Course locked. 10 minutes later, with a low hum, the boat came into view, descending like a hovering manta ray from the sky. He'd launched it from the orbital freight ring on his way down, using MagRav gliders and AI-guided descent tech. The vessel looked like something out of a Dreams leak, matte black panels, solar skin, and an angular silhouette that betrayed its off-world origin. It glided silently across the lake, touching the surface with barely a ripple. He guided it. To the center right, next to the marina, from the elevated deck, he looked across at the people sipping chroma wine on the marina's lounge terraces, their faces twisted in confusion, then alarm. Within 3 minutes, drones launched from the HOA tower. Sleek white machines with blue LED eyes began scanning his vessel. Jocks turned away from them, calm. They were running ID verification, checking property boundaries. He knew what they'd find. Everything he'd done was legal. Then came the call. A projection blinked to life on his deck holographic. High race and aggressively polite. This is Blythe Marrow, president of the Shimmer Lake HOA. You are in violation of community water use policies and are hereby ordered to remove your unauthorized vessel from Shimmer Lake waters. Jock stared at her digital form and then turned, his attention back to the lake. Not your lake, he said. It's mine. Has been since before your HOA even existed. Blythe's hologram stiffened. You've entered restricted space. I'm contacting local enforcement now. Jocks didn't flinch. The AI enforcers were predictable. They'd show up, scan property data, and either enforce or walk away. He'd prepared for this moment for years, carefully logging deeds, backups, and loopholes only someone with interplanetary level clearance would know how to use. Do that? He replied coolly. Let's clear this up. Sat back as his houseboat powered up its solar shielding and extended a floating garden canopy over the deck. Above, a patrol drone had already begun its descent, sirens flashing. But Jocks just smiled. This was going exactly as planned. The patrol drone hovered 20 feet above the lake's surface, casting a blinking red glow over the water. A second drone followed closely behind, scanning the houseboat's ID signature with laser-precise sweeps of blue light. On the deck, Jocks leaned against the rail, arms crossed, watching with mild interest as the digital officers began their work. The larger of the two drones emitted a tone neutral, clinical, and faintly metallic. Unauthorized vessel detected, property dispute registered, commencing arbitration protocol under Municipal Enforcement Directive 9.72. Please stand by. Already standing, Jocks muttered. Inside the houseboat, his onboard AI EVE processed the drone's signal and began relaying archived data packets, property deeds, legal filings, and the high-priority satellite geotags Jocks had secured. Before re-entry, the lake, it confirmed again, was within the Halloran property boundary. Not by inches, but by almost a quarter mile. The HOA's fancy marina was parked in sovereign waters they didn't own. Jocks could see the ripple effect. On the drone network, their lights dimmed slightly as they rerouted through central arbitration servers. Nearby, the marina buzzed with activity. Residents, dressed in smart fabric leisurewear, had gathered near the edges to film with their wrist comms and monocle lenses. The HOA tower glowed brighter as its internal systems powered up. Then Blythe Marrow returned, this time in person. A sleek, black water skimmer pulled up alongside the marina, and she stepped out onto the hovering dock, her posture straight and shoulders sharp as steel. Even without augmentation, Jocks could feel the neural intensity coming off her, a woman, used to control, backed by corporate muscle. Her voice carried across the water, amplified by a speaker implant. "You're making a mistake, Mr. Halloran. This community was built with precision. We're not just neighbors, we're shareholders. And that lake is a critical asset." Jocks raised a brow. "You should have read the water rights contract before you built on it." Blythe smiled tightly. "You're not the only one who knows how to read old laws. I've filed a conditional override with county arbitration. Within minutes, this vessel could be impounded as a hazard to shared recreational property." "Good luck with that," Jocks said, tapping the rail. "Show her." A shimmering hologram flared to life on the deck beside him, spinning slowly in the air. It was the original Halloran deed from 2083, complete with sublayer notarization and biometric verification from his great-grandfather. The lake had been engineered as a private body, fed by underground aquifers that didn't fall under the public water-sharing regulations. That legal carve-out had remained intact, forgotten by most, but not by Jocks. The enforcement drone pinged. Preliminary review complete. Jurisdiction confirmed. Halloran Property Zone 13B adjacent floating structures. Exceeding boundary threshold. Arbitration suggested. Caution. Potential HOA code violation. Penalties pending. Blythe's jaw tensed. The crowd around the marina began murmuring. The very presence of an enforcer siding, even slightly with an individual over an HOA, was rare. These associations usually had airtight contracts, enforceable through automated legal bots. But Jocks had brought something they weren't prepared for. Off-world legal protocol experience. She tried to pivot. "Your houseboat wasn't registered with our shoreline database. That's a violation of Section 6 of our Lake Security Covenant." Jocks shrugged. "That covenant's invalid here. My shoreline, my database. Yours ends 300 feet back, where your surveillance net tries to overlap with mine." Another ping. The drones had completed Phase 2 of their scan. Now they were transmitting to the county registrar's mainframe. The response would be binding. Jocks stepped away from the rail and moved toward the bow. "You wanted to call the cops. Here they are. And they're about to tell you whose lake this really is." As he spoke, the patrol drone's lights shifted to green, a full verification code. A second later, an enforcement seal was projected above the lake. Property rights confirmed owner. Jocks Halloran. The entire marina went silent. Jocks smiled. The green enforcement seal hovered in the air. Above the lake, rotating slowly like a silent gavel dropped from the sky. Its glow rippled across the water's surface, as if stamping ownership with each gentle wave. On the deck of the houseboat, Jocks Halloran watched the stunned faces on the marina platform. He didn't gloat. There was still one more move to make. He tapped a hidden panel on the boat's helm, revealing a dark interface. The screen flared to life, protected behind layers of encrypted code. EV. Initiate Operation Tethys. Authorization. Halloran X7. Confirmed. The AI responded. Quantum contract activation sequence engaged. Verifying clause structure, ... verified. Initiating retroclaim process now. Operation Tethys had been a pet project during Jocks' time off-world, a tool designed to navigate and enforce dormant legacy-era land and water rights, using post-quantum authentication. Most Earthside legal systems hadn't yet adapted to this level of tech. That was his advantage. He wasn't just fighting with facts, he was fighting with time. A new projection bloomed in the air above the houseboat, forming a layered map of the lake. The marina, its coordinates highlighted in red, blinked with urgency. A thin line traced back to a clause embedded deep in the Halloran family charter. A clause tied to the original construction of the lake. The clause read, "Any and all floating structures moored on Lake Halloran shall be subject to the ownership and discretion of the property holder in perpetuity unless explicitly permitted. Otherwise in contract, there was no such contract." Jock zoomed the map. News of the takeover spread faster than wildfire through the HOA's internal network. Within hours, what started as whispers among residents had escalated into a full-blown digital maelstrom. Private message boards were flooded with threads, some filled with rage, others with disbelief. Someone had even created a trending hashtag, #Marina Mutiny. Jock sat in the newly acquired marina's observation lounge, sipping a mug of solar-brewed coffee while reviewing the AI system logs. Every camera, sensor, and communication channel had been rerouted through EVE's control. He hadn't just claimed a floating luxury structure. He'd taken over a live data stream that revealed just how deeply the HOA had embedded itself into people's lives. Surveillance files showed biometric scanning of residents without informed consent, facial recognition. For guests, even predictive behavior analytics. The HOA hadn't just been managing the lake, they'd been quietly collecting profiles, selling lifestyle patterns to corporate advertisers and neural AI trainers. Alex's eyes narrowed as he flipped through archived files tagged behavioral nudging. Protocol. "This is more than just a water dispute," he said aloud. Evie's voice responded calmly. "Based on the metadata, 72% of HOA digital policies violate post-2071 citizen autonomy laws. Would you like to publish the findings?" "Not yet," Jock muttered. "Let them try to spin it first." As expected, the HOA launched their counterstrike. Before nightfall, Blythe Merrill called an emergency assembly and began live streaming to residents and media outlets. She painted Jock as a dangerous rogue technocrat, man with off-world modifications, fringe legal strategies, and a personal vendetta against structure and order. Mr. Halloran's actions threaten not only our marina, but our entire community, Blythe declared, flanked by her board members. He represents a type of chaos that does not belong in responsible AI-integrated society. We must restore stability. But Jock had already anticipated the smear campaign. He activated EV's media relay and began streaming his own feed direct. From the marina's core hub, the stream opened with a simple overlay. "Data doesn't lie. Let's look together." Then came the recordings, encrypted footage of the HOA conducting secret votes, automating fines through algorithmic biases, and initiating biometric collection without consent. He didn't have to say much. The images spoke volumes. Within 30 minutes, his stream had more viewers than Blythe's. Independent journalists started dissecting the metadata, confirming authenticity. Civil rights groups chimed in. A few prominent AI ethicists labeled the HOA's practices predatory governance. The backlash was immediate. Several residents began filing breach of contract suits against the HOA. At least 2 members of the board resigned lived during Blythe's stream. And in a final blow, the county's Municipal Oversight Division issued a public inquiry into HOA operations, freezing their authority until a full audit could be completed. Jock stood on the upper deck of the marina, now bathed in the soft glow of twilight. Drones hovered in the distance, news crews trying to catch footage, but they respected the perimeter. No longer intruders, just observers. Blythe hadn't returned to the dock since the county's notice. Her skimmer was still moored near the main platform, but its power lights were off, an unspoken symbol of defeat. EVE broke the silence. System scan complete. HOA surveillance tools have been purged. Resident data caches decrypted and archived for independent review. Good, Jock said. Make it public. Everyone deserves to know how deep this went. He watched as lights flickered across the water homes surrounding the lake, now pulsing with quiet uncertainty. For years, they'd lived under the illusion of order, efficiency, control. Now they were seeing the machinery behind it. The manipulation. Jocks didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. This wasn't a victory. Not yet. But it was the beginning of a reckoning. The lake was no longer silent. Where once it had been the sterile centerpiece of a gated community, quiet, curated and closely monitored, now pulsed with energy and sound. Children laughed as they launched solar paddlecraft into the water. Drones buzzed overhead, not as enforcers, but as assistants, helping install modular float labs and hover greenhouses. The marina's once exclusive docking slips had been converted into free access bays for autonomous research vessels, personal skimmers, and experimental watercraft. Jocks stood on the upper deck of the former concierge tower, rebranded simply as the Hub. He looked out over the lake, watching his students from nearby tech collectives collaborated with independent engineers to design open-source filtration systems. Several pods were already floating in test mode, purifying the water in real time and feeding energy back into the lake grid via kinetic converters. Evie's voice chimed gently. Community access has tripled since the last cycle. No incidents. Reported sentiment index is at 91% positive. Would you like to review today's innovation proposals? Later, Jocks replied. Just let me watch a minute. In the weeks following the HOA's collapse, the county confirmed the total dissolution of Shimmer Lake Community Authority. Their assets were seized pending investigation, and residents were given the opportunity to opt out of the former HOA contract entirely. Most didn't hesitate. Freed from surveillance and arbitrary restrictions, people began to rediscover something they'd forgotten: autonomy. Of course, not everyone had stayed. A third of the former residents had packed up and left some still, clinging to the idea that order had been stolen from them. But those who remained quickly adapted. Jocks offered support through the Hub, using his own off-world funds to establish grants for tech development, art projects, and sustainable water systems. It wasn't just about reclaiming property, it was about redefining ownership. Jocks had spent years on Saturn's moons helping terraform alien oceans, building infrastructure for colonies that didn't yet exist. He'd seen firsthand how a body of water could be the heart of something new, not just a resource to be sold or restricted, but a living system to be shared. That was what he was building now, modeled for what community could be when people were trusted, not controlled. Floating classrooms now dotted the shoreline, each built from reclaimed HOA materials. Every student learned how to maintain a solar cell, design a microfiltration engine, or run simulations on lake ecology. Even local wildlife was returning. Fish patterns had begun to normalize. Birds that hadn't been seen in years now nested near the water's edge. Evie interrupted again, this time more urgently. New transmission received. It's Blythe. Marrow. Jocks blinked. Seriously, put it through. Her face appeared in a crisp hologram, but she looked different, older, not just in years, but in energy. The sharpness was gone, replaced by a kind of resignation. I won't take up your time, she said. I just wanted to say, I understand now. Not everything needs to be managed. You were right. I tried to control something that was never meant to be caged. Jocks nodded slowly. The lake has a way of teaching people. She gave a faint smile. Good luck, Mr. Halloran. I hope what you're building here lasts. The hologram flickered out. Jocks took a long breath and turned, his gaze back to the water. The sun was beginning to set, casting long gold streaks across the lake. Beneath him, the Hub thrummed quietly, filled with life, learning, a sense of purpose that no algorithm could fabricate. He touched the railing and said softly, "It will." And for the first time in years, the lake felt like home again. Here, our 5 AI image generation prompts based on key scenes from your sci-fi story HOA, called Cops as I floated my houseboat into my ranch lake mins later. Their $2 million marina was mine. These are structured to help an AI image generator like DALL-E, Midjourney, or Leonardo produce vivid, relevant visuals. 1. Prompt. Houseboat arriving on private lake, a futuristic houseboat floating on a serene ranch lake at sunrise. Metallic design with solar panels, A lush tree-lined shore in the distance, modern homes on the opposite bank, drones circling overhead, tension in the air, sci-fi lighting. 2. Prompt. HOA drones confront the Houseboat 2. Hovering enforcement drones with glowing red and blue lights scan a futuristic houseboat on a lake. A high-tech HOA marina in the background filled with luxury skimmers and glass towers, a dramatic sky with tension and authority, cyberpunk suburban aesthetics. 3. Prompt. Digital map revealing property ownership, a glowing holographic map projected above a houseboat deck at night, showing legal boundaries of a lake with red and green markers. Legal clauses floating in mid-air, a man in a tactical jacket, standing calmly while residents look shocked from a nearby marina, dramatic neon lighting. 4. Prompt. Jocks walking onto the marina after winning ownership. A determined man walking confidently from a houseboat onto a luxurious floating marina. Residents staring in disbelief, soft evening light reflecting off the water, floating smart. Docks and AI-controlled gates unlocking, atmosphere of quiet victory, hightail sci-fi realism. 5. Prompt. The transformed lake community, a vibrant, open-access, futuristic lakeside community. Floating classrooms, greenhouses, small watercraft, operated by residents, children playing, drones assisting peacefully, birds in the sky,